All right, friends, I'm really excited to be joined by a dear friend of mine, somebody who I met in a very transformative period in both of our lives. We were coming on retreat together in Costa Rica. It started as a divine connection, which I'll let her kind of tell the story of because I actually want to get refreshed on it as well. But Tamara Kailany is joining me. And Tamara, thank you so much for being here. Talk to me a little bit about that first initial connection between you and I, and we'll kind of take it from there as far as the divine just working its way through all of the things that I think you and I
As the
are doing.
divine always does. And I appreciate you for inviting me today. I'm very, very happy to be here. I feel like we've been talking about this for so long and it's finally happening.
Well, and we just did like, and just so everybody knows, we just did like an hour before this because we were just so interested in talking about all the things.
The
We try
issue,
to we're trying to distill it down for all of you guys,
the
but
thing is between you and I like we talk a lot and I'm Arab, I'm Middle
no.
Eastern, so I swear. And so I like to talk, but I also have been learning how to listen. And so I
Hmm.
hope I've been doing a good job doing that with you. But yeah, let's talk about our story, how we met. So this was about 2 years ago, I want to say, right? It was 2021, I want to
Yeah,
say.
sounds right. Maybe like 2020.
Oh, is it 2020? Oh my gosh, that's 3 years ago.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, I remember I moved back home. So I was living in Seattle at the time and I was working corporate. And I remember intuitively that it was time for me to move back to California. And so, the whole thing with COVID was happening, and it just felt better for me to be around family, to be around friends. And so I moved back home. And during that time, working from the computer was just not in alignment with who I really truly was. And so I was trying to figure out, do I stay in this world or do I create a whole different path for myself? And there was a lot of fear, there was a lot of anxiety, and I really was not sure on what to do. And so I started kind of looking around to figure out, well, what kind of job will look good for me? What can I see myself doing? And what I realized is I could not see myself working for anybody anymore. And so I just was like, I just need to quit this job and figure out what I'm doing next. And most of the time I've always been taught that make sure that, you quit and you have plan B. Well, guess what? I didn't have plan B. I didn't have plan C. I didn't have plan D, nothing. And so I was like, okay, well, I need to quit this job because now it's starting to affect my mental health, my well being. And, being in a Middle Eastern family, we are raised in a way where, especially as a woman, um, we're always told you got to do this, you got to do it this way, your reputation, your self image, and whatnot. And so there was a part of me that felt like, well, if I quit my job and I don't have plan B, what is that going to make me look like in the community? How are my parents going to view me? How are my brothers going to view me? So there was a lot of fear that was more inflicted by others versus, me thinking of how I felt of myself. But, the mental health got so bad to the point where I didn't care. So I
Hmm.
quit that job. And while I quit that job, I started to recognize that I needed to take a break. I've been working since 17 years old up until I hit almost 28 years old and nonstop. And
Hmm.
so I said, well, what would it look like to just not work for a few months and just take time off? Again, the anxiety and the fear hit because, well, where's the money going to come from? I'm always used to having a check every 2 weeks. And then all of a sudden there'd be nothing. And so I was like, okay, well, what brings me closer to my heart and brings me closer and in tune with what makes me the most happiest? And I knew it was being around nature. I knew it was traveling, meeting people. And so I went online and I started researching for places nearby in California. And I literally remember putting in SoCal retreat centers. And so, of course, your business popped up and I was like, this is interesting. So in San Diego, go for a digital detox for like 4 days and I can kind of just get away from here and figure out what's the next step. Then I started going down onto your website and I saw something about Costa Rica. And that trip was supposed to be leaving, I think, within the next 3 days.
Hmm.
And I was like, hmm. And I remember going also on there and looking and realizing that there was only one bedroom left. There was one spot available and it was marked like 50% off or something online or some sort of percentage. And so I looked at it and I just felt like I was like, maybe that's supposed to be for me. Am I really going to fly to Costa Rica, a country I've never been to? Just quit my job. I don't even know if I have enough money when I come back, like to be able to buy the things that I need to buy and do whatever it is that I need to do. But is this in alignment with what I'm supposed to be doing? And so I was I had this habit at the time where I was writing, divine diaries, which meant I would be writing letters to God, and I would be asking, God, if this is the right thing for me, give me a sign and let me know. And I specifically asked for a sign of, well, if this is where I'm supposed to be going, please have John give me a call and talk to me and let me feel good about it. And because I didn't want a salesperson, I didn't know you. I didn't know who worked with you or anything, but I specifically was like, I want John to call me. And so I scripted all this stuff out. I closed my notebook, and I remember literally a few minutes later, my phone rings, and it was a random number. So I pick it up and I said, hello. And you go, hey, is this Tamara? And I said, yeah, who's this? You go, oh, this is John. And I'm just like this on the phone. I was like, oh, John from SoCal Wellness Retreats. And you're like, yeah. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, I just had a few questions because I emailed you as well, just to see, to get more information about it. And so, we started talking, and I just instantly felt like that's exactly where I was supposed to go. And I think,
Mm.
was it a 7 or 8 day trip? Do you
Yeah,
remember?
7 days, 6 nights.
Okay. So yeah, it was about a week. And so I was like, maybe it's time for me just to kind of tune out for a week, be in nature, be like in the unknown, because I was
Mm.
so used to being in the known, used to being in control, used to you know, just know with everything, being okay with everything happening as it is, but
Mm.
so kind of foreign to being in the unknown and surrendering and learning that art. And so after talking to you, I felt so good about it. I went and booked everything. And then I remember going to my mom and I told her, hey, I'm leaving to Costa Rica in 3 days. And she just looked at me. She goes, what do you mean you're leaving to Costa Rica by yourself? I said, yeah. And she goes, I literally don't know what I'm going to do with you. First, you quit your job. Now you're leaving to Costa Rica. She goes, who are you going with? And I said, I'm going on a retreat. And she goes, wow. So you quit your job and now you're using your money to go on a retreat. And I said, that's exactly what I'm doing. I don't know why, mom, but I just feel called to go there. And this is very foreign to my family to know, to do things without a script,
Sure.
without kind of planning. You just kind of jump into the unknown and you go. And so I packed, I came, I met you, and I met the most wonderful women ever that I'm still friends with. And that trip really made me realize that it was time for me to walk my own path.
Mm.
I've been walking, so many paths of other people, from religion to culture to family to friends to teachers, that I was wearing so many different masks, and I forgot about Tamara. I didn't know who she was. And so Costa Rica was such a great catalyst for me to remember who I was and to really be like, no, it's time to really have the courage to stand up and to walk a path of not really knowing what it's going to look like, but kind of really trust this power within me, like the God, the divinity within me, that somehow it would lead me to exactly where I'm supposed to be going. Well, lo and behold, 3 years later, I now have a business where I'm able to help and tune people to the power within. And, I'm able to work with different ages, different genders, because I've realized that this is the connection that people are looking for. And
Mm.
earlier we were talking about manifestation and this like kind of new age spirituality that works for some people, but it doesn't work for all people. And so I've recognized within myself that I wasn't really worried about manifesting a car or house or, a marriage or children. What I really wanted is this connection within myself that nobody can give me except for the divine within. And so when I started to kind of work on learning how, well, first being aware of it, learning how to use it for good, and then it letting it teach me how to empower myself from the inside out, I realized that all the things that I even desired, divinely desired, were coming to me anyways. So I said, well, I guess that this is definitely my path. And my first client didn't come from me going out and marketing myself. It came out of nowhere. And so that was kind of like the saying of, when the student is ready, the teacher arrives.
Yeah, and what you said, I mean, there's so much good in what you said, and our stories are so paralleled. It's almost scary. And I think actually the theme or the title of that retreat in Costa Rica was "Remember Who You Are," right? And,
I
yeah,
don't even remember that.
yeah, and it
That
was
makes
something,
sense.
like that came to me where international travel and really going on those out of the box adventures was the first thing that really made me realize who I was, and very similar.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I actually didn't even have, I felt like I had as long a run as you, but I was 18 to 25, where it was high school to college, college to professional life. And then it was a layoff, a job that I chose to leave because they changed the whole job description after I got there. And then it was the firing that eventually set me free, and it's so funny how the constructs of, our parents, our teachers, like everything that you outlined is so true, right? It's like we spend so little time, and we'll dive deeper into, how to really listen to the heart. But what else is interesting is you talked about, manifestation or new age manifestation, and people really are able to manifest anything they want. In fact, I would go so far as to say you're manifesting all the time,
All
right?
the time. Mm-hmm.
And I heard something recently that it's just like one of those like stop you in your tracks kind of moments, where it was like Bob Proctor, who I really, really love, and he talks a lot about the quantum physics side, the energy side, and really, on a deep, deep level of understanding how these things are going from energetic thought realm into our three-dimensional reality. And he said, the universe isn't giving you what you want, it's giving you who you are.
Totally.
Right. And so we talked a little bit before this podcast about how you can distill, like the way that we have done with yoga in the West is like we've taken just the asana piece, just the posture piece, right? To look a certain way or feel more
Mm,
flexible. We've just given that to people as like this little package without all these other steps. That the goal of that practice is really self-awareness and at a very high level enlightenment, right? But we've kind of extracted it to kind of serve the purpose of what we think it's going to need in a very materialistic sort of way. And so when we are able to understand that that connection is so intimate, right? And I love the word divine. I think it really
mm,
speaks to, energy as everything, energy as God, however you want to look at it. But like that is what we're tapping into when we talk about any kind of spiritual practice. It could be your
yeah,
journaling, it could be your meditation, it could be, there's one size fits all, or not one size fits all for everybody, I should say. So I want to go into, you came on this retreat, and then you went back home and you had all these things to face, right? Family, the crisis of not having the twice a week paycheck and all that kind of stuff.
totally.
How did you then take what happened on retreat, bring your own flavor into it, and start to, because I think that's the question everybody's asking, right? It's like anybody could just quit their job, right? Anybody could just blow everything up and start from scratch, which a lot of people do after retreats, and I don't always
Mm-hmm.
advocate that, but that's sometimes what we need.
Yeah.
But it's like, what do you feel like were the most important steps and tools that took you from that sort of cathartic experience to then being able to like form it into something that you could do as a profession, as a career?
Totally. It's a beautiful question because I remember on the plane ride home, I promised myself that I wouldn't lose myself in the old matrix, that I
Mm,
would stay true to the divine matrix. And that's kind of what I like to call it. And what that looks like is when I go back into this old environment that everybody knew me as the old self, I would need to learn how to, number one, not judge others and
mm.
allow them to judge me. That's okay.
That's a
Because that
big one for
also,
me, I gotta tell you.
it's hard. Guess
I
what?
pray
It's
on
not
that every
easy.
day. Like
Yeah, it's
dissolving
really
my
not
judgment of
easy.
others and being okay with being judged. It's like it's a daily thing for me.
Especially when, you have such a pure soul and a pure heart and you want to do good in the world and sometimes other people are not able to receive that. And what I realize is it had nothing to do with me. It's actually the way they perceive themselves and how they are walking this path. And
Mm.
so I just remember always going back to the divine. I always went back to my heart. And there was a lot of times that I spent crying. I cried so much. And I remember, being upset. I remember going through Dark Night of the Soul so many times. I think one of the things I didn't mention is I had my midlife crisis at 25. That's really young. And so
This
it
is
didn't
like we
stop
just
there.
got it. You and I just got it out of the way, just like get it out of the way.
Well, during that time, I was like, wow, really? I would prefer not to actually be here anymore because it was so painful. And so I went through those things. And so when I started to get to my late 20s, I learned a lot on that, and what I learned was to have grace and to have patience with myself, and to really seriously allow people to be who they need to be in that moment of time, because if I can allow them to do that, then that means I have also allowed myself to be who I am when I needed to be,
Mm,
who I was in certain situations. And for me, I've always been a very sensitive person, very emotional person, but nobody knew that. It was something I just kind of kept internally, and face forward, I would just show people that I've always had everything together, because people would
mm,
look at me and be like, "Oh, you're beautiful. You have a great job. You're making a lot of money. You look like you have the luxurious lifestyle." But internally, I was so broken, and I was so like not that at all. But I held that image for so long that during that time on the way back from Costa Rica, I was like, I can't do this anymore. I
mm,
have to be myself. I have to learn how to be noble. I have to learn how to kind of really be true, because I
mm,
know if I can be vulnerable, it allows other people to also relax and be vulnerable and be themselves. And
mm,
if it triggered other people, that meant that it's something that they have to figure out within themselves, has nothing to do with me. And
mm,
so it was kind of me parenting myself, me
mm,
coaching myself, me kind of healing myself, but it wasn't by myself. It was me connecting to that power and asking for guidance, asking
mm,
for protection, asking for, support. I will tell you something. I am not who I am today without this divine matrix, without this
mm,
divine power. There's no way I could have done it by myself. And so now being so in tune with it and letting it, kind of come in from inside of me and being able to embody it on a physical level, it's given me so much peace and tranquility that I've always wanted, and I wasn't sure if that was possible, because the environment around me didn't show me it was possible. Everybody around me was so like, emotional, and there was a lot of chaos and a lot of problems and arguments. And so I just didn't understand it. I'm like, well, I guess that's how life has to be for me too. And so when I started to kind of dip out of that world and give myself the opportunity to be like, well, what do I have to lose? I have nothing to lose. And to look at things from a higher perspective, I just kind of started to feel like, okay, I'm not alone. I'm not by myself. Although it
mm,
might physically feel like I'm by myself, but spiritually and mentally and emotionally, I'm not alone. There is this power that is guiding me and is literally telling me exactly what to do. And
mm,
that's learning how to trust the intuition. It is like this divine compass that every single person has been created with, but not everybody knows how to tune into it,
mm,
or to access it. Because guess what? We're living in a society that there's not a lot of, spotlight on that. Like right now we're living in a generation where, the younger generation are starting to be like, healing is cool, therapy is cool,
mm,
manifestation is cool, meditating and journaling and doing all this stuff is cool. So that's wonderful, because it's showing us that yes, the world is changing, but
mm,
it's going to take some time. And it's the same thing through my journey. It takes time and patience, and you really have to have the resiliency to and to have a why.
mm,
That was the thing for me. Why am I waking up every single day? Why am I here every single day? What is it that I want to be doing for
mm,
myself and then also collectively? So I think me connecting to how do I want to serve the world? How do I want to serve the divine is really what kind of was my big why. And that's really what would kind of get me up in the morning and want to do the work. And
mm,
I love it. I love it. The work works. I've seen it happen in my life. I see it happen in my client's life. And, we were talking earlier about the youth that I work with, but I didn't actually tell you the age group.
mm.
My youngest is 15 years old. So imagine working with somebody who is
I
just
can't.
starting high school.
I can't.
I know, I know.
I
I mean,
can't.
I was like in love when my first client came, and she's a teenager, and her mom was kind of reluctant of like, do you think you can work with her? She has high anxiety and a lot of pressure from school and sports and friends and blah blah blah. And I said, why wouldn't I be able to work with her? Does she have the
Mm,
will? And she said, yeah. I said, then yeah. So if you
mm,
have the will, the divine is going to create the way. And so
mm,
that's what I realized for myself is like, if I can wake up every single morning with the intention of wanting to be of service to myself, and then somehow that lead me to be of service globally, then I have a purpose. I have something to live
I
forward to. And
I think it's
yeah,
so important. The question was, how did you take what happened on retreat and then turn it into a business? And then you've spent the last few minutes really talking about, I think, not what a lot of people would anticipate, right? They would say, like, well, did you build a website? Did you start like a mailing list? Did you build
literally
a
nothing.
Facebook group? All that kind of stuff. And it's something that I've been grappling with, right? For ever since I started SoCal Wellness Retreats. It's like you have this burning desire, right? To do the thing that you want to do and to share it with the world, right? And you know that these spiritual practices and this connection with something greater than yourself has started you down the path, right? But then it's really easy to take the off ramps, right? Like it's really easy to take the flashy, like, hey, this thing will solve your sales problems, and this thing will solve your client retention problems, and this thing will automate your blah blah blah, and chat gpt will write all your meditation for you, and blah blah blah. Like you could just keep going and going and going and going, right?
That's
And
a rabbit hole. Yeah.
so I try so hard in the 4-day retreats, right? Or when I work with people, even like I help people who are like leading retreats, how do they get to where they want to go? And it's a really delicate thing, right? To like get into people's psyche, that if you really understand the relationship with yourself first, which is where you started, which I think is
Hmm.
so important, right? And I would go so far as to say, society not only doesn't teach these things, but I would go so far as to say does a pretty good job of taking in the other direction, right? Of like,
Totally.
here's how to distract yourself with your cell phone, social media, pornography. Alcohol is on every advertisement. It was one of my come to Jesus moments. Was like I was working at a job where we were targeting kids, males in their teens, and we were running alcohol ads on the videos that I was producing. Yeah, we would come out of a
Oh
meeting,
my God.
right, about who we were targeting, and then I would sit at my desk and watch videos that we produced, and there's the Bud Light ad, and I'm just like, I can't do this, like
Mm.
this. That was one of my like profound, like, stop
Gosh,
the
that's so
music moment.
toxic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I mean, it's the reality that we live in, right? And so I was listening to George Carlin. I don't know if you know George Carlin, the
Hmm.
comedian, and he talked about him. He was very direct, and he was like, "No, they don't want you to be free thinking. They don't want you to be free spirits. They want you to follow a certain order of things, right?
Yeah.
Because if you keep people contained and just engaged enough, but just dumb enough, right, that they'll just follow along, then
Or you
people
can
who are in
control
power
them.
can stay
Yep.
in power. And exactly right. So yeah, I think that that's a part of it. So that self-awareness and that even self-liberation piece, right, comes with an element of, I love the word will, right? That's something that's been coming up for me so much, because every time I retreat,
Mm.
right, and people say, well, oh, I don't know, like 20 minutes, 30 minutes in the morning, meditate. I have kids, I have blah blah blah. And I tell people, I'm like, okay, take out your cell phones, go to the part where it says how much screen time you have every single
Yep.
day, and then the apps that you use. Even the most high achieving, busiest people I've ever worked with, like we all have 20 to 30 minutes, right?
Yeah.
The reason I love the cold therapy is because no morning existed in the history of mankind that I wanted to get in freezing cold water. I do it, you know what I mean? And it's that first overcoming of that part of yourself that can just
Yeah.
bypass and go into default and run the unconscious programmings, right? So I love that you started there, right? It's like to do the work for yourself, to take an adventure, do something different. Awesome, right? B, like really do a hardcore look at yourself and like, what are the decisions that I'm making and who's influencing those decisions? And do I really care that, they think the way that they think too? And then 3, it's like the will. And then the last part is the faith, right? Will and faith, right? Like to
Yep.
have the willpower to get up and want to actually do it every day, to know what your why is, like you said, every single day, and then continue, like when COVID happened and when all these things that interrupted all of my grand plans, right? That always happens. That's part of being
Hmm.
human, right? How do we stay the course, and how do we stay that path?
I think one of the things we should highlight is faith. And faith is a big one because that's believing in something you cannot physically, tangibly see or feel
It's
yet.
so
And
hard. It's so hard,
yeah, it's literally
especially when you
believing
live
in
by
the
your five
unknown.
senses all the time, right? Like I tell people that it's like, if you're living by your five senses all day, every day, why meditation's so powerful is because it's the extraction out of the five senses,
Exactly. You are
right?
ascending into a whole different dimension. And
Yeah.
so, one of the things I've learned on my path is yes, it's so fun to meditate, to ascend, and to kind of let go of the body in the physical world. But I also want to enjoy being human and not lose my
100%.
humility in the ascension. And so
Mm.
that was kind of when I first started, on this self-development path and having all these beautiful spiritual practices. All I wanted to do was just stay high vibrational, stay, in the higher dimensions, meditate for
I
hours and
wrote
do all
today
of these
about getting
things.
up at 4 in the morning for like 4 months
Yes,
straight and just meditating 4 hours a day. And I turned into a recluse. Like I didn't want to go be a part of society anymore. Like it was bad. Like I went too
yeah.
far. You can go too far too, you
And
know?
it happens, right? There's seasons for everything. It's the only way we're going
Sure. I
to
love
learn
that.
and to figure out what algorithm works for us. And
Mm,
so there's a lot of things that I did that was so on this extreme side. And then I hopped all the way on this extreme side. I'm like, okay, that doesn't work. I got to figure out a really good balance. And what that
mm,
meant was, how can I be human and integrate my spiritual self as well, and vice versa? And
mm,
so, what that meant was, I'm going to pray, I'm going to meditate, I'll do the things that feed my soul and feed my spirit. But also, what does my human need? She needs
mm,
water, she needs food, she needs entertainment, she needs to travel, she needs to do certain things and, exercise that also feed the human body. This is such a beautiful gift. It's a creation from
mm,
the creator, and whatever the creator looks like to you. For me, it's the divine, it's God. And so I feel like I'm a piece of God. And so
mm.
I got to take care of my physical body, got to take care of my skin, got to take care of my hair, got to take care of my body. Beauty is a big thing for me. And so I realized having that balance is actually what gave me this beautiful equilibrium from, the 3D to 8D, where it's like I can have fun down here and I can have fun up there too. And that's what I wanted. I wanted something that was simple, something that's digestible, something that, you don't really require a lot other than using this power that's already within you. You just got to learn how to harness it.
Can I tell a quick story?
Please do.
So when we were on said trip to Costa Rica, first of all, Tamara showed up with this luggage container
Okay, no, you
that you
can't
would
say
have
this
thought.
story. That's no.
I'll keep it family friendly.
No,
But
no, no. You can
let's
talk
just
about it.
say
I don't
that
care.
Tamara showed up like as if we were going to Paris for like a month. Let's just put it, and you can fill in some of those details if you want to. But essentially, we were there obviously to do breath work, do meditation. We also on the international retreats, we get to go out, we get to experience some culture, some food. So one night we decided we were going to go out to this reggae bar. It was like the
Mm-hmm.
only like place to go out and like listen to live
Mm-hmm.
music. It was like the whole town came there, right? So the little handful of tourists, which there wasn't many in this cute little town, but would come out, and then it would be like all locals, right? It would be fishermen, it would be like guys who were
Little
bringing
kids.
us
Don't
places,
forget
like
the
our
little
cab
kids.
driver would be there, like all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And Tamara like goes for it. Like she's like got the like J-Lo dress on, she's like hair, makeup, like the whole nine yards. And this was a place where literally like drunk people were falling over like in front of us as we were getting there. So we walk in and it was like the scene from Animal House, like where they, walk into the bar and the needle comes off the record player and everybody's just like, who are these people, and I love that whole night for a lot of reasons, mostly because the reaction that we got, but then also that we just blended and we had so much fun and we were dancing on stage. And then
Oh,
the
it was.
last part of that story that's really fun is, do you remember what happened when we were going to leave trying to get a ride home?
How can I forget? I'm really glad we made it home safely.
So I asked like the guy who's sort of working there, like he's waiting tables half the time, but then half
John, he was
he was
not he was not working there. He was
he
just
was
having fun.
delivering people drinks, but then he was also cutting it loose on the dance floor. Like he
I
was
could have done that too.
yeah, it's true. He was half and half. I think technically he was employed by the establishment, but he seemed like at that point the most reliable source to find us a ride home. So I tap him. He calls a guy over. The guy walks over, who's I guess going to be our cab driver, and he's not
Mm,
double. He's triple fisting beers. He's got two beers in one hand, one in the other, and I'm like, maybe option B. And so he goes and calls another guy. Now the other guy, kid, runs over, and this kid's like 15, maybe, like
I
probably
think he was
14,
13. He just
maybe
looked
13.
15. Yeah.
And so now I'm like, I can't ask him to call a third party over. I'm like, so this is it. This is like your two options, right? Rock hard plays, literally. So we opted for the young kid. We all pile into like his little Isuzu, I don't even know, like little SUV thing. I'm sitting in the back. There's no padding. I'm sitting on the floor of his trunk. It's just metal, like on the ground, and we're bouncing up and down
It
like
was
the
like a bounce
entire.
house in that car.
Oh
Yeah.
my God. And I'm just like, my ass is just hitting the ground over and over. And then at one point he goes, Fast and Furious. And he starts whipping the wheel and doing like these like burnout turns up this gravel road. Yeah, when we got back home, I was never so grateful to be on like solid land.
I was praying the whole time, just so you know, in that car ride. So by the grace of God, we got
Yeah,
home
I think we're
gratefully.
all we were all using our highest powers to get to that point.
100%. But I will tell you, when we walked into that place, I genuinely think because our vibration was so high, because of all the work we were doing with you, with
Yeah.
the breath work and the meditation and the yoga, and also the people there at the place that you picked, it was just kind of like, you feel like you're at your grandmother's and your grandpa's place. Like it just felt so family oriented. So I think that our vibration as a whole, when we walked into that place, literally the music stopped and everybody was staring, and I was like, what's happening? Like, are we not supposed to be here? But it was the complete opposite. And we had so much fun. And the thing with the suitcases, you guys, let me tell you something. Even if I'm traveling domestic, I take Southwest for a very specific reason, because I'm allowed 2 suitcases, a backpack, and a carry-on. And I will always take them. So this is how you know I'm not a liar. I love to look good, because when I look good and I feel good, I attract good. And so again, that's my algorithm and that's what works for me. And people who are listening to this, if you're really trying to figure out if going on a retreat and really tuning out of your known and going into the unknown, if this is something that you feel like you've been thinking about and you just haven't pulled the trigger, please, let me tell you something. This is definitely a sign for you to do that. But
Mm.
you want to pick the right person you want to do that with, because just speaking out of experience, being with you, John, and the people that you attracted on that trip, I remember that like it was yesterday. I literally thought it was 2 years ago, but you're sitting here telling me it was like 3 years ago. In the memories that we created, the transformation that was happening, just I think within days of us all hanging out and the nature and the experience, I wouldn't be able to get that anywhere else. And I
Mm.
always tell you that I'm so grateful to you, because when I went on that experience, I came out of it as a completely different person. And when I say a completely different person, I really wasn't embodying a new identity. I was embodying my real true self.
Mm.
And so that's what I went there. That was my intention, and I left like that just within 7 or 8 days. That's, to me, this is very mystical and it's very magical. And I pray and I hope for the listener on the other side to take advantage of an opportunity like this, specifically with John, because you will experience something you've never experienced. I am a living example.
I appreciate that so much, but honestly, just to kind of tie it back, and I want to kind of close in hearing just a little bit about your work and like how people can access you now and getting to from point A to point B and filling in a couple more of those gaps. But, I think similarly to like what you were already saying, and I imagine you're probably going to express, is that, for me, I've tried fancy websites. I've paid a
Hmm.
lot of money, tens of thousands of dollars to people with this magic bullet, right? Of like, SEO, pay per click, Google ads, all this other stuff. And ultimately, I just had a lady book yesterday who was just a recommendation from a lady who had
Oh,
come and
word of
like
mouth
very,
is the best.
it's really the low hanging fruit, and it's oftentimes not the necessarily easiest path, right? I want to make a distinction. It's like it's not the easy path, it's the path of least internal resistance,
Mm.
right? It's the one that when you take the time to get quiet and you really hone in on what your purpose is and your why, like you talked about. And I always talk about the emotion, right? It's the Joe Dispenza thing, the emotion before the experience. Like if something genuinely lights you up on a deep heart level, right? Like, and in your heart of hearts, like it really is made for you, the right people always will show up. Like the right people always show up to these retreats. I say it on the first day of the retreat, and then people come up to me on day 4, and they'll sometimes be like, "Oh, I thought you were kind of being like full of it, or I thought you were like kind of blowing hot air." It's like they're like, "No, it was actually perfect. Like these people are now my friends, they're my family. Like I can't imagine any one of these people not being there." But again, that's not a manifestation of cracking some marketing code or doing some like crazy technical like voodoo. It's really like having a clear intention, right? And really trying
Yeah.
to keep this space open. And again, I've taken many of those off ramps. I've taken many of those, I get pitched all the time of people like, hey, this will fix it, this will help it, I can coach you, I can do it, blah, blah, blah. And I even just almost pulled the trigger on one last week. And it was my dad of all things who was like, he
Oh, wow.
investigated it from like a technical standpoint. He just was like, this infrastructure is not good enough for what you need. And so I was like really grateful to like have that, because I was just drinking the Kool-Aid of what their like whole marketing spiel was, right?
Yeah.
So I really I want to just reiterate that, like, if you are listening to this and you're wondering, and look, I'm so thankful that you have that experience, but I even go so far as to like people call me and it's not the right fit, and I want to get
Mm,
them to help, and I don't charge them. I just want people to find what's meant for them, and that's like really been an important, just even reframe within the last few months of like, how can I be of service at the highest level, no matter what's at stake for me financially or whatever. Like, so long as it's not hurting me, so long as it's not taking me out of my flow, right? Like, can I be that person, whether I'm going to get paid for it, not paid for it, full retreat, not full retreat, etc. So I just, I hope that that true north, that compass for everybody, right, can be found however that happens. So
mm.
fast forward me now to, you've left the retreat, you decided to go into helping adolescents, and what does that look like today? Like, what does your business look like today? And then maybe you can follow up with that, like how people can find you and resources for that.
Totally. And just so you know, I definitely am in alignment with what you're saying of, the marketing, the sales team and all that stuff. I think it's great. It works for some people. For me, I wanted to really test my faith. And I like to test the limits. I like to challenge God. I will tell you that.
No.
I do. I do. I play a different game. And so I was like, okay, well, if this is an alignment, then send me my first client. And so I was working with one of my friends who is a empowerment coach for women. And I was just trying to figure out, what does this environment even look like? And I'm one of those, when I get that divine intuitive download of, hey, it's time for you to embody a different vibration. I start working on it and I start preparing. I don't wait. I prepare. And so that was my preparation of, well, let me see what this realm looks like. What does this environment look like? What does it take to be a coach? And how can I empower others? Because actually, as a little kid, I always knew I wanted to help and make this world a different place.
Mm,
And so, I was in her world and we were working together and all this stuff and learning all that stuff. And then she gets a text message saying, like, hey, I have this young woman who's 18 years old, really wants to be coached. And are you willing to work with her? And so my friend sends me the text and says, I don't work with youth. I actually work with, women who are at least late 20s and up. And she said, T, I think this is your client. This is not my client. And so, I read the text message and I could feel the energy. And I said, yeah, that's mine. And so we set up not an interview, but we set up like a consultation call. I got to meet her. She met me. And in that moment, I didn't feel nervous. I didn't feel anxious. There was just this flow and this alignment of, this is exactly what I'm supposed to be doing right here and right now. And it was
mm,
because I was preparing for it. I listened to my intuition. And so working with that young woman kind of opened up this realm of working with, I've told you kind of before, but just for the listeners, one of my biggest missions is to work with youth and to create this next generation of leaders in the world,
mm,
to create this really beautiful world that we are just kind of preparing for at the moment. But working with that young woman built my blueprint to work with so many different age groups and genders. It didn't stop there, because I understood that when you walk a path of being a multidimensional being, then you're going to serve on multidimensional ways. You're not going to serve in just one way. And that's what I always felt in alignment with, in alignment with myself, because I feel like a lot of people wanted to be like, well, what's your niche? And, still want to put me in a box. And I'm like,
I get that all the time.
yeah, I'm like, no, you tell me what you need. I'm
Mm,
going to tune in and then I will intuitively create a blueprint for you.
mm,
And so that's how it's kind of been working. And, what I realize is, what I'm actually doing is tuning them to this power. I'm just reawakening. I'm just reminding them of this power. I'm not their power. I'm reminding them of their power, and they're waking up and realizing, like, oh my God, there's so much potential for me. And I said, yep. your divine potential has just been unlocked. And that's what I call myself, like the divine potential unlocker. And so if we do this to young adults and to youth, like I said, my youngest is like, yeah, 15. I'm hoping to work with even younger because I know it's possible. They have it. They're just needing the right tools, the right resources, the right role models. And then they're on their way on this path of feeling so empowered from within them that they don't really need anything outside of them to give them validation anymore.
Mm.
We're living in a society where they look for validation in a relationship or drugs or sex or alcohol or social
Likes on
media.
Instagram. Yeah.
Exactly. And so I'm kind of rewiring that in a way of, let's go back and tune inward
Mm.
and figure out how can we show you your own self-worth, have your self-confidence. How do we regulate your nervous system, your hormones? How do we reprogram the mind so it works for you? How do we
Mm.
kind of reprogram the limiting beliefs, create new beliefs? And they start to get into the meditation, into the journaling, and reading books, and they actually want to learn. They're
Mm.
thirsty, they're hungry for this stuff. So that's how I knew. I'm like, no, that generation is different. They're here actually to create a whole different world, and they're here to heal. And
Mm.
so they need people like you and I to hold the space and to teach them. And so I get the opportunity of working with these wonderful young adults and youth, and I also work with, people that are way older who have very specific challenges that they want to understand from a higher perspective, and learning how to use this power within to be able to create anything and everything that they ever wanted. And I wish I can share with you everything that I do, but this podcast would be literally a week
No,
because
I
there's
know.
so
I was
much.
just thinking that too. Maybe could you give, and I imagine, and if it's not true, just say, but like for me, the breathwork, meditation, yoga, cold baths, quantum physics, like the snapshot of things that we do on retreats is really the things that have made, the biggest impact on me personally. And then so I've just taken that and built a bridge for people. What would you say are like the handful, or maybe, like 10 things at most, like that you feel like practices have kind of helped you across that bridge? And then are those the things that you're just imparting with the people that you work with?
Yeah. So I would tell you one of the most important things is learning how to feel your emotions and
Mm.
understand the emotions and how to turn that pain into divine power.
Mm.
Because I've recognized a lot of my clients, they come with a lot of pain and a lot of trauma, and and a lot of people have been taught to suppress them and just to keep moving forward. And so I kind of start with, well, what is it that you want to gain out of this? What is it that you're divinely desiring? And the reason why I use divine desire is because you want to kind of work with the divine in a way where you get this intuitive download of, okay, now it's time to implement this specific energy to kind of manifest this intentionally. You're not just going to manifest things just to kind of, you know um how would I say this in a nice way? I like to articulate my words in a way that could be received well. But a lot of people manifest things in a way where it's very materialistic. Okay. I kind of work in a different sense of what is it that your soul actually needs, that you need to
Mm.
intentionally manifest, because we're unintentionally manifesting on a daily basis. Everything's coming from your thoughts, the energy, and that creates a reality. So if we can
Mm.
be very intentional, with creating habits from the time that they wake up to the time that they go to sleep, and maybe you're listening to this and being like, oh my God, that's a lot. It's really not, because you're already walking a path and you have your daily habits that are not even benefiting you. So what if we rewire that in a way where it actually benefits you and it creates a completely different, vibration feeling for you, that creates a different reality for you. And so
Mm. I think
a
that's
lot of
too, just like, to me, like I call it like true north, or the anchor point.
mhm,
Like you need to create that for yourself so you know what it is and you know what it feels like. So then you're going to open your eyes from your meditation, your breath work, whatever, and you're going to go out into the world. And the world is, of course, going to push you and pull you in all these different directions, right? And so,
mhm.
almost like a sailor who gets pushed off of course, right? Like you just want to know when you're getting pushed off of course, because then you can course correct in quicker time.
Absolutely.
And I think that's why, like, I don't personally work with people in that space one on one, but I can see the value in having a coach in that space, right? Because it's not only that helping to check in with that being off course, But then it's like the accountability that I think a lot of us need too. Like that's the gap that I can't close with retreats, is like people go back to their
Mm,
lives and some really transform from the retreat and then move forward in that trajectory. And then some have varying degrees of success because of their own willpower. And so that's
totally.
where I think someone like you is so valuable, is like if you can help them find that anchor point, that true north, and then it's more just like nudges right back. It's like setting the workout program for somebody, right? So they know what they're doing and then just help to nudge them. Is that kind of like a good
Totally.
spot?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what's so funny is most of the time my clients call themselves out. I don't even have to call them out. They know
Yeah,
exactly
yeah,
what
yeah.
they're supposed to be doing. And sometimes they just need somebody to hold the space, to validate their feelings, validate their experiences, and then show them a different way.
It's so
And so
funny, right?
that,
How like that just like little bit of self-awareness, right? Again, if we know
yeah,
what that point is in ourselves, then you know when you're not there, right?
yes.
As
And you
invaluable as knowing the point, it's knowing when you're off the point, you know?
Yeah, and we need each other, right? Like, think about when I went on that retreat. The reason why that healing was so powerful is because we were all connecting on this oneness, consciousness, energy. And so the healing then elevates and it actually happens a lot quicker than you trying to do it all on your own, trying to figure it out. So why would you need to recreate the wheel if the wheel's already there? But then you can take that wheel and then create it in a way that works for you. And so
Mm,
that's what I want to kind of give my clients is like, this is this is the algorithm, but I want you to take it and make it work for yourself. So in that
mm,
moment, I'm still going to be there to guide you and to show you, the door. But guess what? You actually have to walk through that door and you have to make it work for yourself because,
mm,
I meet with them once a week for about an hour. And so within that hour, a lot of transformation happens. Now, outside of the time that we meet, it's all the basketballs in their court.
mm,
And when we meet next week, then I see, okay, where is it that they are limiting themselves? Where is it that the doubt comes in? And so we go through meditation practices where I'm able to go into the subconscious mind and I start to pull these things. And it's so wild to me because it literally comes from the time that they were little.
oh
And
yeah.
they'll be like literally in their 40s telling me, "Oh, I don't know why, I have this fear of being broke." And then we go back and it's the time of one of their parents says, "Oh, money is disgusting. Money is dirty." And so
Mm,
when they have that awareness and they kind of disconnect from this old paradigm and now they're in tune with this new paradigm, the healing happens because of the awareness. But then you got to have the discipline to continue going. You got to have the
yeah.
will to continue going. And I think my clients specifically, I have different programs. Some clients want to meet once a month. Some clients want to do, straight up 3 months. I've had a client that signed up already for a year with me because she's like, no, I know I need to do this. And then I have other people that are just want on spot. And I'm like, whatever you need, I will show up and I will be of service. And, me and so that very first client I told you about, that 18-year-old, so get this. So we did the coaching for, I want to say about 10 months now. And this girl is like tuned in, tapped in, turned on. Imagine 18 years old, and this girl is like out there mindfully dating, being intentional, regulating her hormones, her emotions, and living this life with so much purpose and so much intention at 18 years old. Like
Mm,
this is almost unheard of at that age and in
superpower.
that generation. It's amazing. And so I knew this when I met her. I said, somehow me and Sarah are going to be working together. And so down the line, I started to get the download of you need to create a youth group, a group coaching where you have an 18-year-old who's gone through the program that can now hold the space for other teenagers and young adults. And so her and I are now working on that blueprint to be able to open it up as group coaching because sometimes youth don't want to do one-on-one coaching. They prefer to be in a community and
Mm,
connect on that level, share their stories, share the struggles, but also share the success and the divine blessings together. And so that's also kind of a thing that I'm working on that will be launching by the end of the summer of just having this really sacred space for young women to come together and to kind of heal on such a beautiful level where, the anxiety, the depression, the stress, certain addictions or cyberbullying is no longer limiting them from their full potential.
I love that. I love that. And I think it's so cool that your connection to this young woman, right, came from your coach who probably could have taken her on as a client, right?
Totally.
Like knew that she was a better fit for you. And I think if you're listening to this, whether you're choosing like coaching, a retreat, or and if you're wanting to just reach out into the world of any kind of help, right? Just to be sensitive to the fact that if somebody's meant to work with you, or if you're meant to go on a retreat, or if you're meant to do something, it will not feel like this laborious, like salesy sort of process.
Mm,
Like it should feel really natural and really in flow. It doesn't mean it's not going to be hard, right? Like you might have to like financially take, a bit of faith on, you might have to, get up a little earlier, create time in your schedule, whatever it is, right? Like I don't want people to shy away from that side of it, but I just want people to be sensitive because you see that a lot in this world, right? Where there's like
yeah.
act now, buy quick, think later, kind of thing. And it's like, it's really important. Like that's kind of what sort of kickstarted it for you. And now it's, transpired into this thing. So I guess in closing, I would want to know from you, like from that experience of quitting your job up until now, A, was it worth it? And then B, what do you feel like are kind of the next, maybe just one or two things in your evolution? Like what's going to keep
Mm.
you on this path?
Well, it was absolutely worth it because I'm finally at a place where I have genuine happiness. And that's
Mm,
what I was looking for, is this pure connection within me where I didn't need a person, a place, or a thing to give me this connection. When I have the person, the place, and the thing, it just amplifies, but I'm embodying this power within. So it was absolutely worth it. And everything that I've experienced from, the trauma, the depression, the anxiety, the having the suicidal thoughts when I was younger. This is something, I didn't mention, but the reason why I'm so passionate about youth is because I went through those things. So I understand the things that they're going through.
mm,
So now being 31 and kind of being of service in the way that I had visions of when I was younger, it brings tears to my eyes all the time. I don't, I'm sure you feel the same way, where you just sit there and you're like, thank God I made those hard decisions when everybody told me I was freaking crazy,
yeah.
and that you're wild, but you still, that burning passion that you're talking about, you followed it, and here it is. And so I'm
Mm,
so divinely and eternally grateful. And what looks like for the future for myself, evolution wise, I just see all of this stuff really expanding on a global level, because more than ever, we need people to stand up and to step out in this beautiful divine power within, and to elevate other people. This is the time where we're supposed to connect and unite as one in
mm,
order to co-create a really beautiful earth that benefits everybody. And so, I see myself doing retreats. I see myself doing public speaking. I see myself, being on TV, doing a lot of beautiful things, and co-creating with others. I don't see myself alone. And I think that's kind of what separates you and I from a lot of people, because there's a lot of different coaches and teachers out there that are kind of looking for the fame and all that stuff. I don't care about that stuff. I really care about making a difference and
mm.
changing people's lives on such a deep level, where they understand they're here for a reason and there is purpose. If you wake up, you have purpose. And so I'm so grateful to have met you, John, because you have definitely inspired me and motivated me to move in this realm. And I hope that we can also work together to elevate this world. So that's what it
Let's
looks
do
like,
it,
and that's
baby.
my intention. I'm
I
ready.
love it. I love it. Well, we started off talking about that divine connection, that first, phone call and all that. And I just want to acknowledge the massive quantum leap that I've seen, ever since that person who just said yes and went on a whim 3 days out from the retreat. This like super confident. I'm watching your podcast, I'm seeing your branding, I'm seeing your like the evolution, the amount of energy you put into it, creating music and meditations,
Mm,
all these other things. Like it's such a, robust, and I want to tease that because I want to let people go find it for themselves and figure that out, where they can access you more. But yeah, I'm a yes for a retreat in the future. I really do believe that, what started with me in like my living room in my first little dumpy apartment
mm,
in San Diego is on the precipice now. If I'll just give myself permission, that's really the big one. But if I just give myself permission that it can grow and evolve into something multinational, experiential in terms of bringing in music and art and dance and all these other things, like I personally like see the evolution through community, through I finally just
Totally.
asking for help, like personally,
Yeah.
like even just when I first did retreats, I did everything. I cooked, I cleaned, I did everything. So yeah, I just want to thank you for being one of those people that helped me show
Mm,
myself like that the work was possible. And then that to see you pick up the ball, take it and run with it as far as you have. Not only am I like really happy to see that for you, but it's validation that I need for myself of like, no, you're doing stuff that's now rippling out and going outwards. So before we I'll link everything in the bio sections, but what is first your podcast, and then what's the best way for people to reach out to you?
well, first, thank you. I appreciate what you said, and I'm receiving that. And podcast wise, it's called Finding the Oasis Within. So it's on all streaming platforms, from YouTube to Spotify to Apple Music and more. And the best way to contact me, to be honest, is going to be my business email. As I've kind of stated from before, I don't have a website. I want to work with people that want to do the work.
Mm,
And I always pray that I work with like my soulmate clients. And so far,
yes.
that's exactly what I've been working with. And, I love word of mouth. I love things to be very organic and natural. So, email would be great. I'd love for you guys to connect with me on Instagram. It's Tamara Kailany Coaching. I have a TikTok as well. I'm trying to think. I'm like, what else do I have? Facebook.
Well, if
But
you're not in our SoCal Wellness Retreats Telegram group too, that's another place that Tamara's in. You
Mhm.
can also just pop in, introduce yourself, and she's one of our more active people, thankfully. And they're just shedding light and shedding wisdom. So listen, I don't know how long this went. I feel like I could talk to you for another 2 hours.
Same.
I'm not Joe Rogan yet, so I don't know if anybody's good 3 hour
We
podcast.
will be. I
I
guarantee
listen,
you, we will
it's
have another episode and it will be in a different environment. I can totally see that. I see the vision. So I look forward to that day.
I love that. You know what's really cool? I just heard this the other day and I'll just share it because it's relevant on my mind. But
Mm.
um, somebody was saying, I forget, it was this guy, he worked in tech. Oh, it was this guy that built this like huge following. He did these 1 minute a day videos for like a
Oh,
year,
wow.
and it
Mm.
grew to like 5 million followers. And he built a tech company around it for Facebook and all this kind of stuff. But he was talking about how if you record over 20 podcasts, you're in the top 1% of all podcasts, because most podcasts, 99% of podcasts stop under 20
Interesting.
episodes. So now my new just internal goal is just to keep the recording going.
Creating.
Keep it,
Yeah,
yeah.
keep oh yeah, you have
Keep
such
filming.
beautiful divine wisdom to share with the world. Like, I do want to highlight that your blog, me reading your blog and you sharing stories, because I love hearing people's stories. That's what my podcast is all
That's
about.
why I
It's like
started
human
this.
transformation. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why we have so much in common. But yeah, please continue creating, because everything that you're creating is so genuine, and it inspires me, it motivates me, and it really opens my heart. And I think right now that's what we need. We need that beautiful heart to be open, and us walking this path with, you know, this ability to be happy and to feel content and to feel peaceful, and we need to hear other people's stories and to share that with one another. So please, from the bottom of my heart, please continue creating.
Oh, thank you. Well, I ain't stopping. I ain't stopping.
Good.
All right, friends. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this. I hope you guys got a lot out of it. Like I said, I'll link tomorrow's stuff in the chat, and also jump into our Telegram group if you haven't already. Bye, everybody.
Take care.